Hello YouTube and welcome back to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today I have another tier list video for you, and since I already covered the 5 stars a couple of weeks ago, here's the link to the video, so check it out if you haven't already. Today is the even more relevant tier list for F2Ps, the 4 stars. Prune just released a couple of days ago, and even though I don't have her on my account yet, I wanted to wait until her release to talk about all the 4 stars and their value in the meta entering into Snezhnaya, so that you know who to build and who is worth for your endgame clears and who might just be a bit overrated. First things first, before we get into the actual tier list, this is as much of an objective tier list as it is possible. The thing with 4 stars, it is very difficult to evaluate them, because what is your assumption? Do you assume C0, do you assume C2, do you assume C6, and so on? And on top of that, 4 stars are rarely the main center of a team. They're just there to support the rest of a team. So are you only looking at the individual kits of this one character, or are you looking beyond that and see in what teams you run those units usually and how much those teams are established in the meta? As for my approach, I did a mixture of all these things, or at least I tried. So on my list, I assume the 4 stars at their best potential, so usually at C6, but I will talk about the exact assumptions I had when I get to the character. As for the meta ranking, I did not just look at the individual kit of the 4 star, but at their whole team and how many teams they have in the meta right now. So as an example, a character like a C6 Faruzan, kit-wise, is pretty good at C6, pretty bad at C0, and in terms of meta, even though her kit is really good at C6, she's still kinda whatever, because there are just no meta animo DPSs that would use her right now. Shao, Wanderer, Aoife, Heizu, and even DPS Venti are just not quite on the level where other damage dealers are, which is why her place in the ranking is not gonna be as high. So you see, based on these assumptions, a tier list can change. Without any further ado though, let's get into the actual ranks and talk about some of these characters. First things first, I've prepared 6 ranks from D to SS, and we start at the bottom with the D tier. These units are basically not really worth building, in my opinion, at least as of right now. Xinyan, Kaveh, Freminet, Mika, Amber, Heizu, Barbara, Lynette, Lisa, Yunjin, and Dory. These tiers are kinda ranked, but not too much, so just from general best to general worst. So I don't think I have to talk too much about most of these units. Kaveh, Xinyan, Freminet, they're just not meta. Mika can be good for physical damage, but physical damage is in a really bad spot since basically the start of the game, so we'll see whether that changes with Snezhnaya. Amber doesn't really have any use unless you want to apply pyro really fast, but that's too niche to be relevant. Heizu doesn't have the DPS power. Barbara is not the greatest healer, especially by 2026 standards. Lisa can be used as an electro applicator, but they're just better options. Yunjin has been power crapped, so her normal attack buffs, it's just not worth it anymore, even for her best teams with Yoimiya. There are just so many better options. And Dory at C6 can be valid, but I will still not level 90 her. So there is the D tier. Again, if you disagree, feel free to leave a comment down below, but please stay respectful and let's not escalate it that quickly. Moving on to the next tier, the C tier. This tier is not quite as bad as D, but also you really have to like the character or have a niche team where they can work. However, especially for Imaginary Theater, it can be worth to level some of these units to level 70 at least, so that you have enough characters to enter the harder difficulties. Here we have Ningguang, Sayu, Thoma, Candice, Kachina, Kuchisara, Xiangyun, Yanfei, and Goru. Yes, at C6, Ningguang can be a DPS with Columbina and Linnea, but basically anyone can be a DPS with those two. Sayu, healer, Vivi, sometimes claimer for blunt attacks. Thoma can be alright in Virgin, but Virgin is not really part of the meta. So, and his shield is nice, but not as strong as Inefas or Nicole's or even Lanyans. So, he's just a nice to have option for IT, but for other endgame modes, I wouldn't recommend him. Candice at C6 can be alright with Arlecchino, and before that can be used with Mualani, even though there's so many better options for Mualani by now. So I leveled my Candice to 80 on my account for my Mualani, but now she's just benched as I never run her in that team. Kachina, not much value other than Cinder City, and since there are not that many Geo Forsters in the game anyway, it's nice to have an extra option in IT. Kuchisara at C6 is a pretty strong buffer. Unfortunately, Chevreuse is just too good, and usually you don't have enough slots available to justify running Zara. You'd much rather run someone like Bennett, Chevreuse, Fischl, Jansan, or even 5 stars like Dora, Nicole, and whatnot. Songyun at C6 can work in Skirk teams if you need blunt attacks, like against the Radiant Moon Gecko. He was used a bunch, but again, it's very niche and generally not the best option. Yanfei at C6 can be a valid DPS, but there's so many good Pyro DPSs that you probably have other options available. And Goro at C6, once again, is a good option for the buy teams if you don't have Illua or if you don't want to run Illua, and also for other Geo DPS teams like Itto. However, since Illua at C6 or even at C2 is simply better than Goro, and he doesn't work in that many other teams, he's on the edge of B tier, but he didn't quite make it. Speaking of the B tier, next up we have Dahlia, Yao Yao, Beidou. She will be buffed allegedly, so we'll see where that goes. Kirara, Collei, Yahoda, Faruzan, Diona will also be buffed, so at least for now she's B. Kaya, Charlotte, Aoife, Sethos, Noelle, and Illua. Dahlia is a decent 4th slot for Skirk teams, especially at C6. Other than that, there are not that many Hydra units. You might want to level him up to at least 70 so you can use him for IT. That's at least what I did. Yaoyo is a decent Dendro healer, but doesn't deal any damage and doesn't provide any buffs to your party. So she's just a defensive utility, and some form of Dendro application can be nice, but that's about it. Beidou at C2 at least can work against multiple enemies, as her burst can bounce more and she works in Electrocharge. I'm really excited what they're going for with the buffs. Maybe something with cryo, but we'll see. Kirara is a decent shielder and Dendro applicator, and so is Collei as well. And now for the newer unit, Yahoda. Yahoda unfortunately does not really do much. Her kit is interesting, but it doesn't really work in practice. Like, she doesn't synergize well with any of the Luna DPS teams. Yes, you can run her with Nefer. At C6 she at least provides some crit buffs, and even though she heals and can run Vivi, she's not really part of the meta, and unfortunately I have her at C5, so I'm close to C6, but still, like, she's very underwhelming and I've never really used her outside of IT. Faruzan I already talked about as an example in the beginning. She is very strong at C6 and provides immense buffs, but the characters that she buffs are just not that strong anymore, which is why she is in the B tier. However, if Hoyo decides to release a true Anemo DPS who does not infuse, like Vaka or Chaska, then she might just jump to the S tier even. But that is not the case right now, and also doesn't look like it's gonna be the case anytime soon, so that's why she is in B. Diona will also be buffed, and at C6, she's a decent healer, shielder, and gives 200 EM to your whole party, which is a good option for meld teams as a 4th slot. I really like her, not as a damage dealer of course, but she's a comfortable and flexible character to have. I don't think you'll regret leveling her to at least 70 or 80. Kaya, hard to get constellations on unless you buy them from the shop. I've been playing for almost 3 years and I have C1 Kaya, so there's that. At C6 he becomes better. But yeah, good off-field cryo application. You can run the Bless on him for some buff, and that's about it. Charlotte is a very good 4-star healer, works with Farina and heals a lot already at C0, just needs a lot of energy, but can also run TTTS if you happen to get enough energy on her. And then we have 3 DPSs that I all considered at C6. I have all three of them at C6, and I did level up Noel and Aoife. I did not level up Zethos, at least not yet, but they are good if you ever want to run 4-star clears in Abyss, or you need 4-star carries for Imaginary Theater. Especially at C6, they work pretty well. Aoife, of course, is not as strong as Vaka, and Zethos is not as strong as Clorin or Veressa, but they are valid options, and if you have some spare resources and have them at C6, I don't think you'll regret leveling them so that you have additional options. Noelle is also super versatile as she also heals your party and is really good with Columbina and Linnea and Luna Crystallize teams. So if you happen to have that team core for Luna Crystallize, she can replace Zebai. Obviously the damage is going to be way lower, but she is a good Luna Crystallize trigger with her charge attacks. She applies a lot of Geo. And then lastly in this tier, Illua. Illua is a bit tricky to evaluate as well. The problem with Illua is his kit, especially at C6, is super strong for the strongest team in the game right now for Zebai. However, that is at C6 and it's basically only for Zebai. Even other Geo DPSs like Navia or Noelle don't really benefit much from it because he only buffs direct Luna Crystallize damage, so it has to come from an ability, and the only characters who can trigger Luna Crystallize through an ability are Zebai, Columbina and Linnea. So outside of those teams, he's not really playable. I mean, you can slot him in, but he's not gonna do much. So that is why I put him at the top of the B tier. If you have him at C6 and you have Zebai, well, you probably have Zebai if you have him at C6, then you're lucky and you should definitely use him. I have him at C2 and he is in my elite Zebai team, but even if I can't run him, I don't miss him that much in that case. So yeah, moving on to the A tier, where we're already talking about kinda meta relevant characters that you should definitely level if you have them on your account at a certain constellation. I'll get to that. In the A tier, I put Aino, Layla, Lanyan, Rosaria, Auron and Razor. Razor at the top of the A tier is maybe a bold choice, but this is C6 Razor I have in mind. Unfortunately, I do not have C6 Razor. He is on banner right now with Nicole, so if you want to get some constellations for him, you might want to wish for either Doran or Nicole, but again, don't wish for 4 stars. He hasn't had a banner in like 2 years, so basically since I started he was like on 1 banner, so I have C0, and at C0 or even at C5 he's not really worth mentioning, but at C6 with the Hexerei buffs and the new supports and the new artifact sets, he really became strong, so strong that he can reach 100k DPS in his best teams. If you have Razor and need an electro carry, at C6 he's definitely worth building. The rest of this list is maybe a bit more easy to explain. Auron is a decent electro applicator, generates nitro points from Mawika and can run Cinder City. Rosaria is a decent off-field cryo applicator, buffs your crit rate, can run Noblesse, so it's very useful in melt teams if you need a second cryo slot and you don't have Escoffier or Sitlali. Lanyan is the best 4-star shielder in the game, especially at C2 onwards. And if you pair her with a normal attacking DPS like Arlecchino, her shield should not break anytime soon. Layla is another strong cryo shield option, who is also the best cryo applicator as a 4-star in the game. She has enough cryo application so that she can deal with shield bosses like the Secret Source Automaton, like the Skirk shield boss, on her own. And Aino is special. Aino is, in terms of kit, very bad and should probably be in the C or D tier. Her kit does not do much. At C6 it gets a bit better, she gives you some more buffs that help in Luna teams. But why is she A tier then? Well, the reason is her teams. And since you can only have 1 Columbina and all the 3 Luna teams with Nefer, Zebai and Flints are top of the meta right now, Aino becomes super valuable all of a sudden just because there's only 1 Hydra unit from nod-krai other than her. And even though she does not do anything other than applying Hydro, that is enough to enable a second Luna team, or if you don't have Columbina, enable a Luna team at all, which is why I had to put her in the A tier. Alright, and now we're at the actual top meta tiers, the S tier and the double S tier. Starting with the S tier, here I have Gaming at C6 obviously, Kuki Shinobu, Prune, the latest addition to the game, Xiangling, Xingqiu, Fischl and Yansan. Gaming is by far the strongest 4-star DPS in Genshin Impact and outshines other units like Ningguang, Noelle, Zethos, Aoife by quite a bit, especially if you have the right supports. But if you look for Abyss 4-star clears, you will find him basically in every video because he simply has the DPS power in his best teams to brute force and still 36-star, some chill Abyss flaws. Kuki is a comfortable character to have and still the second best Hyper Bloom trigger in the game in my opinion after Raiden Shogun, but while Raiden is a bit better at triggering it, she also provides you healing, so that is a nice quality of life bonus. And whenever you want to run Hyper Bloom, you probably want to run Kuki Shinobu, and even though Hyper Bloom is not top of the meta, it's still a very viable way of clearing your endgame, so that's why she's still in the S tier. And now the latest unit, Prune. Prune was designed to buff Vaka, similar to Illua with Zubai, but other than Illua, Prune can also work without Vaka. Sure, her best teams are Hexerei teams, and she is designed to elevate Vaka and Venti, so Anemo Hexerei DPSs, and she does so by quite a bit, especially at C6. But even at C0, she still provides you with up to 50% damage percent, which is quite a bit. She can run Vivi, and is a quick swap unit that you don't have to spend too much field time on. So all those things combined make her about as good as a Kazuha if you have a good build on her, and that at C0 is more than enough to justify putting her in the S tier in my opinion. Then we have the three GOATs, Xiangling, Xingqiu and Fischl. Especially at C6, all of their value is still very high. I feel like Fischl got the biggest buff over the last year, as she is also a Hexerei unit and works very well in Electrocharge teams, she works well in Overload teams, and at C6 her application is also super fast and she does a lot of damage. She can now run the new Hexerei set if you don't have any other unit that can run it, for the 40% elemental damage bonus to Electro and whatever element your carry has. So all of these things just secured her an S tier spot probably for the next year as well. And lastly, Yansan. It's a bit sad that I don't have Prune or Yansan on my account, so two of the best forces are missing, yay. But if you have Yansan, she is really strong, especially at C6. She becomes best in slot for Mavuika, for Varessa, for basically any attack scaler that moves a lot. Kinich wants her, and she's already usable at C0. She buffs your attack, she's a second Bennett so to speak, and can run Cinder City. So definitely top of the meta, worth level 19. If you have her on your account, hopefully I get her soon one day. I really want that upgrade. And lastly we have the double S tier, and if you've counted, you realize that there are only 3 units left, and those 3 units are Bennett, the GOAT, Chevreuse, and in my opinion the best Forster in the game, at least right now, Sucrose. I don't think I have to say much about Bennett's value. He heals, he buffs your attack, he's still the best attack buffer in the game, even after Nicole's release. Nicole is more flexible and doesn't have a circle and gives you a shield and buffs the entire party, but when it comes to raw attack buff, Bennett still is the #1. And even though there are not that many teams in the meta that require a pyro attack buffer right now, those who do really want him at level 90 and build. But Bennett is not the only pyro forcer that makes it to the double S tier. We also have Chevreuse, and Chevreuse is, to this day, probably the strongest Fontaine unit released, if you think about it. Like, I feel like everybody has lost in terms of meta value who was released back then. Novi definitely has fallen off. Farina has fallen off. Chevreuse has not really fallen off. Whenever you play Overload, you want Chevreuse, ideally at C6, but even at C0, she is valuable and good enough to justify playing her. And not only does she buff Overload, no, she's so good that you actually started playing Overload. Before her, Overload was a dead reaction and nobody played it, but with her release, suddenly these Pyro and Electro squads look super juicy. And it's still the case. Now Doran and Nicole are out and they make another Overload call with Fischl, but you don't want to bench Chevreuse, so you have to work around that because she's just so good. And at C6 she's even so good that you can run her even without Overload. Like you can run her in Vaka teams instead of Doran at C6 just because of her damage buff. So Chevreuse, one of the best forces we've ever gotten, and I wish they'd put more universal 4-stars in the game like her. And speaking of universal 4-stars, lastly we have Sucrose. Sucrose is just the dream of every F2P come true. Hoi has been trying to replace her with animal units multiple times. We have Aoife, we have now Prune, we have Mizuki, we have Yahoda, and I don't know what. Nobody power creeps Sucrose, and this will not change, at least not for now. Her Vivi, Swirl, EM sharing is just too valuable for too many teams. She can run TTDS, too much value all in once. You don't have to level her talents at all, unless you want to run her as a damage dealer, as a driver. So all you have to do is give her 4-piece Vivi, build EM and level her to 90 and you have one of the most broken characters in the game. I feel like people would pull for Sucrose even if she was 5-star at this point, as she runs in Flint's best team, she can run in Nefer's best team, she runs in Mualani's best team, she can run in Vaka's best team if you don't have Prune or Venti. So there's so many meta relevant teams that want her that you better make sure that you have her on your account, and once you do, level her to 90 and make the most out of her kit. Also, her constellations aren't really that important. C2 is nice to have and C6 gives you a bit of damage percent. Personally, I still have only C3 and I haven't missed a thing. So Sucrose, insane value, kind of timeless unit, and as long as Hoyo keeps releasing units that care a little bit about Rush Strat and a little bit about EM, she will stay top of the tier lists. And with that, I'm done with my video and my 4-star tier list. I hope this video helped you a bit, and now you have a better idea of which 4-stars you should level, you should invest into, and who will help you in clearing endgame, whether it's IT, Spiral Abyss, or even Stygian Onslaught, and who you can bench without having second thoughts. Of course, feel free to disagree with me in the comments. Once again, I'm really interested in hearing your opinions and your rankings, so I'm looking forward to that and try to answer as many responses as possible. Also, if you have any more questions about account investment, 4-stars, leveling, artifact sets, anything Genshin related, leave your questions there and I'm always happy to help. Also, if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it really helps me in creating more content like this, also in Snezhnaya and the next patches. Super excited for that. And with that being said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!